So, fly we're going to tie up here today using one of our favorite new materials, which is this Cascade Crest body fur. And just a pretty simple little sculpin pattern that we're going to tie up here. The key ingredients are going to be that body fur. You need some lead eyes, size medium, whatever color if you want. Some zonkers, preferably a standard size and a dark brownish for this pattern. Some Estas Grande in shimmer gold. Some brown grizzly marabou. Some barred mallard flank in brown. And the hook we're tying this on today is a Gamakatsu 60-degree jig hook with a round bend, and that's a size 1/0. Thread we'll be using is a heavier thread. It's a 210 denier Danville's Wax Flymaster Plus. So to start this thing out, we're going to place the eyes on here. I'm going to show you a nifty trick I learned from a friend of mine, Corey, at the Otter's Den in Columbus. I'm going to flip this over. And when you add your eyes here, normally you're taught to add these in so that they are centered on the hook. But what Corey showed us how to do, and this is ingenious, is if you start them at an angle and wrap them at an angle, then as you come back in to put this tension in on here, what you'll see will happen is this will pull the thread tight, and this actually helps situate the eyes on the hook. Really helps keep them from rotating around on you. So you kind of put a little bit of tension on there. Once you get those eyes set, make a few wraps behind and in front. Come around and underneath these a few times, just to make sure we got these in place. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and add some Flex Seal, some head cement, Zap-A-Gap, whatever your taste is, but some kind of cementing agent to keep those eyes in place. You'll notice here we've kept these on top of the hook. So the next step on this pattern, you flip that back over, is to go ahead and come in here and we're going to tie in our tailing material, which is going to be that grizzly marabou. Highly recommend pre-selecting out your pieces of grizzly marabou. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, grading these materials is important. We're going to use about a shank length here, so we'll come in, tie this in the back, and then we'll simply just tie right down over top of those materials and take them up towards the head. This is just creating a nice kind of uniform body underneath here. After we're done with that, we'll go ahead and trim that off. Next part you need is your Estas. This is going to make the body up on this pattern. So go ahead, tie this Estas in here just at the back. Make sure you get this tied down nice and tight. Using this heavier thread allows you to really wrench on these materials. Apply a lot of pressure. So now we're going to take that, and you don't have to make these wraps one right next to the other. So you'll see this material kind of fills out on the hook. And we're just going to take that forward a little ways here and then tie it off. Now you don't want to crowd these necessarily right up against the eyes, but don't be afraid to take them up close enough so that if you need to make a few wraps back over the top, it won't hurt anything. Next step on this pattern here is to go ahead and add in our wings or pec fins. And in this case we're going to use mallard flank. You could use a lot of different things, but I really like mallard flank. It tends to hold its shape better in the water and really stick out on the sides, giving you those nice pectoral fins. Put one in on one side, come in and put the other in on the opposite side here. What we're really looking for more than anything is to really get the flare out on the sides of these. You can come in, trim off those stems. Now the rabbit isn't necessary, but I always like a little rabbit in on the streamers, so we're going to place this right behind the eyes on top. Because this is a jig hook, even though the eyes are on top, it's still going to ride with the hook point up. Don't ask me why, I can just tell you it does. So you see that little bit of rabbit in there just kind of comes over the top of your body. Now for the finish on this, we're going to tie in some of this Cascade Crest body fur. Trim out a little bit of that body fur away from the material for the tie-in point here. And we're just going to come in, wrap back a little ways, and leave that tied in here. Now we're able to come forward with our thread. You can leave that rest. Now the key here with this body fur is you want it to lay back. So as you wrap this, make sure that it's laying backwards. Then the next step is sort of complicated, but not really. We're going to crisscross over the top of the eyes here with this material. And what that's doing is it's filling in a little bit of that gap that you might normally get with a wrapped material over the top of eyes. As you can see, you may have to play with this material a little bit, work with it in order to get it to lay back on itself, because you don't want it coming forward. You want this all laying back. Come in, one more wrap. So, as you can see, nothing is perfection. If you need to unwrap a few wraps of this stuff, come back. Really the key is here is just making sure that it's filling in the right direction. And you can come up and over the top of this material to tie it off here. Now the eyes, mind you, are optional, but I like the added weight on the front end of this. Really gives it a real cool jigging action. After you got that tied off, you can go ahead and trim it. Rotate this up. And what I like to do for this fly is come in and take the thread up right behind the eye on this jig hook. The whole time I'm kind of slicking back these materials, you can see here. Tying down over the top with the thread. And what makes a nice touch on this fly is to bring in some epoxy or a head cement right here at this point. After you get done whip finishing, you can apply that epoxy, and that'll help protect the thread. For our intents and purposes, we're going to be done with it here after we make a couple more whip finishes. Trim it off. Now if you want to, you can come in, trim this a little flatter on the top, and come in on the bottom here as well. Trim it a little flatter on the bottom. And all that that's doing is just giving you a little bit more of a sculpin profile. Flat on the top, flat on the bottom, thicker on the sides. You'll see when you get done with that, it's a pretty good little bug, pretty easy to tie.